climate change. Nuclear holocaust. Terrorist groups and extremist religions. My guest today says we need a world government to solve these problems. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased this morning to be having a conversation with Dr. Glen T. Martin. Dr. Martin is professor of philosophy at Radford University in Virginia and chairperson of the Radford University program in peace studies. As a world citizen, he has worked in the service of world peace with justice for many years, traveling and lecturing worldwide and authoring many books and articles on behalf of a holistic and transformed global paradigm and world system. Martin is president of International Philosophers for Peace, president of the Earth Federation Institute, and president of the World Constitution and Parliament Association. As a result of his peace activities, he's received several international awards, including the ICISAR Global Peace Award in Kolkata, India, 2005, the World Peace Award from the Office of the World Peace Envoy in Bangkok, Thailand, 2008, and the Lighthouse of the World Award from WCPA Asia and Bharat Vikas Parashad in Chennai, India, 2011, and the Gusi International Peace Prize in Manila, Philippines, 2013. He's also been nominated for the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Award and the Prince of Asturias Award for Peace. And now, Dr. Martin is Chairperson Emeritus of the Peace Studies Program at Radford University. Welcome, Dr. Martin. And start by saying good morning to you, Dr. Martin.
Good morning, Spencer. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And after that introduction, I wonder why you're not running for president.
Well, I don't think it's a proper role for being president of the United States. I think we need a world government, a democratic world government. And I don't even think in the Constitution there is no single president to the world government. It's a cooperative situation where people work together, unlike the United States where people are not working together, as you know.
Absolutely. Dr. Martin, I've had my copy of the One World Constitution here for nearly 30 years. And so I've been aware of the idea of a world government on some level, but in the past 6 months, with all the discussion about the Green New Deal, and of course all the ensuing jokes and comedy about that, and really that kind of keeps us in denial because we keep losing sight of the fact that human civilization is in peril, not just from climate change, but from the threat of nuclear war, potential electromagnetic pulses, even solar storms. And so with all this in mind, I decided to look you up. Now, here's a man who's been involved for years in trying to build consensus to shift our consciousness toward the idea of an effective global government that can address the problems we face today. And again, we laugh and joke about the outrageous mandates of the Green New Deal, the cow flatulence, the no more air travel, etc. But all jokes aside, the message I get from the Green New Deal is that it will take massive central planning to address the climate crisis that we face and the other crises we face. And I think we both know that the problem is too big for America alone. Please talk about that.
Well, it is too big. Even if the United States were to convert entirely to a Green New Deal, China, as you know, is industrializing as rapidly as possible and pouring immense amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And the Russia is doing the same thing. They're trying to continue their industrialization and so on. We need to be on this planet. We need to be on the same page, all of us. Right? In the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I've published several critiques of them. They're based on the present system of sovereign nation states. So, for example, Brazil, a sovereign nation state within which, as we all know, the lungs of the earth are located. They, as a sovereign state, they have the right to develop, industrially develop that Amazon basin for the benefit of Brazil, right? They have the political right. So how are we going to have a future on this planet and deal with these crises that we're facing unless we're united under a single democratic constitution?
That's a great point. We forget that it is their right to develop, but they're taking our lungs away from us.
That's right.
We all have a stake in what Brazil does, as well as several other nations.
Right. Right.
Of course, we could probably talk at length about the Constitution itself. By the way, can people get a copy of the Earth Constitution?
Absolutely, it's available. You can go on Amazon.com, and in fact, the most available copy right now is this little pocket edition. I think it's a really nice little edition. It includes the introduction that I wrote, but it's very inexpensive.
This ratification idea,
and you just go on Amazon.com and you can get it just for a couple bucks.
What are you doing to move the ratification process forward?
Well, we're doing our best within the limits of our resources to get the word out about the need for a single democratic world system under the Earth Constitution. And we're doing this in a number of ways. We try to involve grassroots organizations. What the Constitution does, as you may know, is for the first time in human history, it allows the ordinary citizen of the earth to have legal citizenship as a citizen of the earth under the Earth Constitution, and to actually participate through voting and electing their representatives to the World Parliament to participate in the issues that affect us all on this planet. Right now, in the UN, as you know, the only representatives are governments, right? The ambassadors to the UN represent governments and not necessarily the people at all of those countries. 50% of the countries in the UN are not even democratic, you know, and so we're getting this word out by trying to involve grassroots organizations. We have a grassroots organization in Venezuela, for example, that supports local cooperatives. It's called Spirituality and Revolution. We have another one in Bangladesh called DORP, the Development Organization for the Rural Poor. In various countries, these organizations are supporting the Earth Constitution because what we're bringing together is the top, that is the central planning and organization that we all need on this planet for survival, and the bottom, the empowering of the people of the planet to help make it happen. So that's part of our strategy. We also, as you may know if you've followed this, we've held 14 sessions of the Provisional World Parliament so far. And the Provisional World Parliament operates under Article 19 of the Earth Constitution, which permits the people of Earth to start the government now, to start democratic world government now. Now being, we don't have to wait until the ratification process is completed as it is defined in Article 17. We can start it as provisional world government now. And so the provisional world government has done tremendous work in legislating some 67 world legislative acts that address the most fundamental problems of our planet, including creating an Earth Emergency Rescue organization that as soon as we have the resources for that, we can empower this Earth Emergency Rescue Organization, which will begin defining the requirements for real sustainability. And so we work on all these dimensions. We also have we started a Collegium of World Judges, and we have high court judges from around the world, some of them retired, some of them active judges who identify with this collegium, which is under Article 19. It's part of our mandate to start it now. These judges are making themselves available so that when we're ready, the first bench of the World Supreme Court system can be constituted from that group.
I'm curious whether members of our government have consulted with you.
Yes, but we're not opposed to talking to heads of state, which we've done, or politicians and so on, because we need everybody on board.
And what has been the result of that?
In the U.S., it's more difficult, right? Every year now for 18 years, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, who is the founder manager of the City Montessori School of Lucknow in Lucknow, India, has held a conference of the chief justices of the world, where high court justices come from all over the world. It's quite impressive. Last year they had, I think, 200 participants from 130 countries, something like that. And they're all high court justices, and we, WCPA, often it goes there as a speaker. I often go there to this event, or we have membership there if I'm unable to make it, who are recruiting these justices and talking to them about world government. In fact, this whole meeting, Jagdish Gandhi calls it in order to talk about world government. Well, the United States has not sent any high court justices. They've been invited, of course, but they think in terms of what is known as exceptionalism. They really don't have to participate with the rest of the world in trying to solve the world's problems. So anyway, but we're talking to people around the world in this respect, judges, politicians, as well as trying to empower the grassroots.
It sounds like the idea of national sovereignty is not really conducive to a world parliamentary system.
I've done quite a lot of scholarly work on this concept of sovereignty, and some of it is in my books that I publish. Sovereignty, the present world system, is often called the Westphalian system because scholars say it was first defined at the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. What they defined was a system in which the governments would have control over their internal affairs, and each government would be separate. They would be bounded by absolute boundaries with control over their internal affairs. But what this system does is take that notion of sovereignty, right, which is a legitimate government is indeed sovereign over its internal affairs. But the corollary of that system is that there is no law above any of these governments in regard to their external affair. Yeah, no judiciary, nothing. And so many scholars, going right back to the 17th century, have called this a war system, because if there's no law, there's nothing to stop the big and powerful nations from overthrowing or invading or subverting other nations for whatever reasons, economic or political. Then we have a war system in which this notion of sovereignty becomes deleterious. It becomes disastrous, right? Because what it allows these nations to do is militarize themselves and create this system that we now have in the world, in which we might wipe ourselves out in nuclear war at any time. So what I'm saying is that sovereignty, meaning the legitimate authority of a government over its affairs, its internal affairs within its borders, is perfectly legitimate. But this idea of sovereignty, meaning they recognize no law above themselves, is not legitimate, right? And that's what we have to understand, that this second notion of sovereignty, the right to make war, is not legitimate.
But
And
isn't peacekeeping the intent of the UN?
no, it's not. In fact, it's sometimes thought to be, but because the UN Charter, the preamble of the UN Charter says, we're creating this organization in order to secure peace, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold suffering to humanity. But the actual charter, of course, mainly influenced by the five winners in the Second World War, the five permanent members of the Security Council, that charter writes is organized on the basis of national sovereignty. It actually says that. So every nation, it says, is sovereign over its internal affairs, and every nation is independent in its foreign affairs. And this is the disaster. So the UN is based on this old paradigm, this Westphalian paradigm that's centuries old, and now we're in a globalized world. We need a global paradigm of unity and diversity, and that's what the Earth Constitution offers.
Recently, a Princeton study confirmed that America is in fact an oligarchy run by large corporate interests and the elite. What will the World Parliament do to combat oligarchy?
First and foremost, it addresses that through creating genuine democracy in the world that is free of the influence of big money in politics. The Constitution says that every candidate for the House of Peoples, which is the largest house in the World Parliament, will have a booklet, right? A certain defined size. They'll have so much space to talk about what they do and what their ideas are and so on. And this will be regulated by the World Elections and Boundaries Commission. It is not something for sale, as it is, for example, in the United States and in many countries around the world that call themselves democracies, but are really, as you point out, oligarchies. And secondly, the very constitution of the World Parliament will put into power, there's three houses in the Parliament, as you know, the House of Peoples, 1,000 representatives, the House of Nations, 1, 2, or 3 representatives from each of the nations, depending on its population, and the House of Councilors, right? And this is a body of 200 people from 20 electoral districts around the world, elected on the base and nominated by students and faculty of institutions of higher education and elected by the other two houses of Parliament. This House of Councilors will be people of wisdom and integrity and whose records are known. The House of Peoples will be elected on the basis of equality of electoral resources. And the only nation, in the House of Nations, they'll be appointed or elected by each nation. So the whole system that we now have in the world, in which corporations, right, the big corporations and the rich, are integrally related to their nation states from which they base themselves, right? Every nation promotes its own economic interests, which are the interests of its rich people, its corporations and so on. So that in the World Parliament, that will constitute perhaps 300 people out of the 1,500 that are there in the Parliament, right? Much more difficult. It'll be much more difficult for this to become an oligarchy.
Sort of diluting their power.
That's right. Absolutely.
Another question I have...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Another question I have is about extreme religious groups that hate each other and want to kill each other. And just really about law and order in general. How is this handled?
Well, there's a number of books recently that try to deal with the question of democracy. I've been studying it myself. Errol Harris, for example, in 2008, came out with a book called Global Democratic Renaissance, and he has a chapter on this problem of religious fundamentalism. It's a serious problem because, as many scholars have pointed out, because religious fundamentalists do not recognize democracy as a system of dialogue and debate among rational people who have to come to some sort of an agreement or condition. So they appeal to absolute authorities, which are regardless of democracy. Those authorities are usually religious authorities, but they have nothing to do with the need for us to cooperate on the planet to solve our problems. And so this is a serious issue. I believe, I've written about this, that if we manage to unite under the Earth Constitution, and every person on Earth now has world citizenship and the rights of a world citizen, this will have a tremendous influence on our self-conception. Even whether we're religious or not, or humanists or Muslims or Christians, will begin to realize, which I think is most fundamentally the truth, that we're all human beings on this planet. We're all Homo sapiens, and we've got to start thinking as human beings first, and only secondly as members of this or that religion or this or that country. So I'm thinking that the very process of ratifying the Earth Constitution will help us grow, and I'm not saying to get rid of religion, but to grow spiritually so that we see the most fundamental truths of religion, which have to do with one God, one over all humanity, and each religion is a different route up the mountain toward God, but they're all under the same. Allah is not different than God, is not different than Brahman. It's the same ultimate principle that is there. And I think that kind of maturity in thinking and growth will be immensely supported by the ratification of the Earth Constitution.
As Americans, we talk a lot about the American dream, but in a world parliamentary system, what does life look like? What do people aspire to? Pretty much the same things, or is life a little bit different in a world parliamentary system?
One of the things that the United Nations Development Program has pointed out, for example, in its studies of development over the last 20 years, is that people's satisfaction in life comes through a feeling that their life is meaningful, a feeling that they have social recognition from others, a feeling that they have had choices that allow them to develop their abilities and their talents and so on. It doesn't necessarily come from great wealth or great power, right? I am thinking that we're in the Provisional World Parliament, in some of our bills that we've written, we try to articulate how a kind of self-interest can be appealed to, which isn't necessarily the interests of me versus you, my greedy climbing of my wealth, power and so on. It's a we try to build in social recognition, people who participate in the government and the project of sustainability on the earth have great honors, great reward, but they don't have great wealth and power, right?
Sounds like
disrupt this process.
Sounds like self-actualization.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's authentic self-actualization. You know, right now, people who grub for just more and more money, they're in a way that's denying their own really human potential, right? To have a meaningful life, not just a life of possessions, right?
So how does someone participate in becoming a citizen of Earth?
Well, on one level, we're already citizens of Earth, right? As people have pointed out. And there are organizations like the World Citizens Association in Paris, coming out of Paris, or the World Service Authority that's in Washington, D.C., that will grant us a World Citizen card, if we want to apply for it. I've got one myself. But under the Earth Constitution, everybody is already a world citizen. What this means, however, is that if we ratify that Constitution and bring it into effective law, then our world citizenship will be legally protected and empowered, right? And so there's a difference between being a world citizen as a kind of concept that defines our common humanity on this planet, and being a world citizen that has a legal framework where they can claim rights and duties and responsibilities that are there defined legally by the government. And that's the goal, right? The reality and the goal, yeah.
Can people participate in this process by becoming signatories to the Earth Constitution?
Well, yes, absolutely. Signatories, yeah, people can go online at www.earth-federation.org, and there's a space there to become a member of WCPA, but there's also a space to sign the Earth Constitution there. And so we have many thousands and thousands of people who have become personal signatories of the Earth Constitution, which gives them the rights of world citizenship under that Constitution, but these rights cannot be legally enforced until the Constitution is ratified, of course, under Article 17. Yeah.
Well, this has been a long process, hasn't it? Starting with Philip Isley back in the 50s.
Yes, I think that the legal beginning of WCPA was 1958, but he was a world federalist all the way along. He was in prison in the Second World War because he objected to the war as militarized sovereign nation states. He objected to the whole system. And then after the war, he got out, and with his wife, Margaret Isley, they began to work with the World Government offices in Chicago, and then by 1958 they formed their own organization outside of Denver, Colorado, and we went from there. Yeah.
How are you getting your message out there today about the Earth Constitution and the World Parliament?
Well, we have we encourage our membership to, wherever they are in the world, to be working in their local venue to get the message out about the Earth Constitution. And it's the Constitution itself that we're trying, right now, it's the Constitution that we're trying to get out to the world. The message is that the world has an option, right? Right now, it looks like, to many thoughtful people, we don't have a future at all because we have these 193 militarized nation states struggling with each other. At the same time, we have nuclear weapons and global climate collapse is happening. But the world has to know that we have a real option. And so our membership are encouraged to get this out. We have members for example, in India, in Mumbai, who every single time they get to come to a gathering or a meeting, they have a big, an enlarged cover of this. And the members of the meeting, whatever the meeting's about, the members of the meeting will hold up this, right? So that when it gets on the web, when it gets out about the meeting, this will be there. And so we have an annual conference. It's been the fourth annual conference is coming up in December, beginning on Human Rights Day, December 10th, at O.P. Jindal Global University in outside of New Delhi in India. And so our members will be coming from different countries together, and we'll be talking about the global economic crisis at the coming, the global environmental crisis at the coming meetings, and talking about how we can promote the Earth Constitution more rapidly. And so we also have, and I think this is very important, we have founded World Parliament University.
Well, this is something pretty new, isn't it?
Yeah, it's new. It's quite new, so it's now here in Virginia. We have the Earth Federation Institute registered as a non-profit organization, and it supports the Earth Constitution. Under the Earth Federation Institute, one of our names for doing business is the World Parliament University. So we now, and we have a center in Guwahati, India, northern India. We have a center in Bangalore in central India. We have a center here in Virginia who are developing courses and online certificate courses, online degree programs that we will offer to the public online, taught by people who are experts in not only global problems but the Earth Constitution. So that will be opening for students very shortly, within the next month or two. And so this, we expect, will be another way in which we'll be getting the message out worldwide. And we're right now also working to affiliate with accredited universities about this. We're sending out messages to various universities who have shown themselves sympathetic to what we're doing, asking if they want to collaborate in their own online programs with ours. So we're hoping that this is a key element in getting the word out worldwide.
You know, I don't see this being a mainstream process. I'm not looking for Rachel Maddow or CNN to come on one day and say, hey, everybody, we're moving to a world parliamentary system. I don't see it happening like that. I see it as being more of a grassroots movement that hopefully will sort of displace the system we have today.
I think it will happen. Whether it will happen in time to prevent runaway global warming is another question. But I think it's going to in the last decade, the last number of years, our membership is growing rapidly, WCPA, and people are beginning to pay attention to the Earth Constitution. Educational institutions are putting it as part of their curriculum, and it's getting out there rapidly. And I think this is the beginnings of an explosive process that will before too long, the Earth Constitution will be a household word on this planet, I think, and it will. We don't want to. I don't want to use the word displace the present system. I want to talk about transforming the system, right? We're not talking about abolishing corporations or getting rid of nation states, right? They'll still be there, but they need to have their proper place within a world system in which we're all working together to solve these terrible fundamental problems. And so I think that's going to happen.
Well, Dr. Martin, I think that's a very optimistic note on which to end our conversation today. It's been very great talking with you.
I appreciate talking with you.
To learn more about becoming a citizen of Earth and the Earth Constitution, go to www.earth-constitution.org. Thank you for listening. This has been a Voice in the Wind production.